Today, I'm very excited to lean into the business and running side of that conversation with Carl Bahner.
I am very excited to be here. I don't think anybody wants all things Carl, but if you want a little bit more, a few things Carl.
There's a lot of business stuff that you're going to have to learn that I can almost guarantee you've never even touched.
The biggest thing is that they're marketing to the wrong people. It's a combination of not knowing what to say and also not knowing who to say it to.
What is probably another large thing that you find that people get wrong whenever they come to you? This episode of the Home Studio Hangout podcast is sponsored by Bliss. Bliss is an audio development company who crafts intuitive digital audio effects and instruments. They've collaborated with artists like Jean-Michel Jarre and Jordan Rudess and have an incredible selection of over 26 different plugins for Mac, Windows, and iOS for all of my mobile producers out there. Whether you are looking for an inspiring synth like the Megalith synth, maybe some classic compressors, filters, or chorus plugins, or if you want to get out of the box with something a little more creative like the Phase Mutant, they have something for everyone. Right now, when you go to bliss.com, that's BLEASS.com, and use the code homestudiohangout, all caps, you get up to 20% off your order. Thank you to Bliss for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Now let's get back to the conversation. Welcome back to the Home Studio Hangout podcast. I'm your host, Drew. Super excited to be back with you guys today. On the podcast, we talk about working and running a home studio and being a, self-involved producer. But today, I'm very excited to lean into the business and running side of that conversation with Carl Bahner. Carl, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today, man.
I am very excited to be here. I'm so glad that we were able to reschedule it because we were going to do this last week and I was a pile of COVID grossness and it would not have been a good time for either of us. So I'm glad we were able to push through that, and now we're here, and I am so happy to see your handsome face.
Dude, I'm very excited to have this conversation. We talked a lot on the internet and like kind of back and forth, and I think it was maybe Dave, your manager, may have connected us or something, and there's some other people that have also kind of connected us that I know that like a lot of the mutuals online and stuff. That's just how it is. And we started talking and we just like text thread back and forth for like an hour. I think the first time we started talking, I was like, yeah, we're going to have to do a podcast episode so that this can be on, because this is going to be a fun time.
It is. Yeah, this is going to be fun for me. Hopefully fun for you, and most importantly, I really hope fun for the listener.
Well, I think the listeners are going to get a lot out of this because I really want to dive into the business aspect of a lot of this stuff. On the podcast, we talk to we have like 2 or 3 main people, kind of a range of people that we generally talk with, and it kind of starts in the I'm just getting started in music production kind of thing. And, we have some conversations about those things, mostly between me and Josh. And then when we bring guests on, we really try to lean into the stories aspect of it. And, for those people that are thinking about taking it seriously, is this something that I want to pursue? Different aspects of the industry, stuff like that. But then also, and this is probably where me and you are going to live and the people that are going to really benefit from this conversation, which is I am taking it seriously and I'm trying, and either I have gone full time or I've been working in a studio for a while, but I want to start doing my own thing, or, really transitioning into that self-employed freelancer type thing, working for yourself type deal, which is, I know, a lot of who you talk with in your content.
I think it'll be fun to dive into. I think not just, how to make the transition into being, an entrepreneur, getting out of the service provider sort of mindset and getting into the business owner kind of mindset.
Yeah.
But I think what would be really fun to dive into, especially knowing some of your passions and other things going on behind the scenes, really talking about growing the career. Because I think there's a lot of people that will get to the point where maybe they've made the jump to full time, and then once they're there, they think, okay, cool, I got this. And then they realize a couple months later, like, oh, actually, maybe I don't. Because there's so much more that you have to do that you can't just rest on your laurels. Like, you have to be always trying to figure out how to take those next steps, and even just figuring out what those next steps even are can be a challenge. And you'll get a lot of mixed messages from all the gurus on the internet telling you what to do next.
100%.
So I think especially diving into that could be.
Yeah, that sounds like a great. I have some ideas on how we can tackle some of that as well. So I'm very excited about that too. But maybe first, let's give a very short synopsis of your backstory, just kind of where you came from, how you did the music stuff. For people that want a deeper backstory, I'm gonna direct them to a podcast episode that you did on your podcast, Secret Sonics, episode 58. If you want like the longer, more in-depth version of, all things Carl.
I don't think anybody wants all things Carl, but if you want a little bit more, a few things Carl. So my short version, back in the early 80s, I was a twinkle in my father's eye, and then skip ahead a bunch of years, and I was in college. Okay, so we're going to skip all that part. So I went to school for music, but my degree was actually in orchestral percussion performance. And I was a dork, proper dork. But I also loved playing drum set. And the professor that I had at the college actively and very vocally refused to teach drum set because, and I quote, "Anybody can play drum set, so I don't have to teach you." Which I found out later was shitty, insecure percussionist speak for, I don't know how to do that, so I'm going to belittle it.
The most untrue statement I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Then I saw him play drum set in a faculty recital, and was like, oh, that's why you don't teach it. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, through that, there was something about it that really kind of forced me to, go outside to learn. And we were technically like not allowed to go take lessons outside of the school for whatever reason. So I couldn't take drum set lessons at the college, but I also was not allowed to go and take drum set lessons outside of the college. So of course I did it anyway, and I would just go up to New York and I would study with, I took some lessons with like Ari Honig and Jim Black and Mark Juliana and a bunch of like really great, very forward-thinking weirdo drummers who I love.
Yeah.
And this kind of set this new path for me where I doubled down into going down the path of being a session drummer and like touring drummer, and really forcing myself to not just do whatever I needed to do to learn how to do what I needed to do. And like, if the information was not easily accessible, like I went out of my way to find it. Right. And if that, and not just the information, but like the perspectives. If the perspectives were not easily available to me, I went out of my way to find them. And that, I think, really set the tone for my career now, doing what I do as a mixing engineer and also as an educator, because there are so many things that I've learned unintentionally and seemingly unrelated things that I learned during my time as a drummer and like a touring drummer that completely shifted how I look at the music industry and how I approach what I do. And like a really big example is just the fact that when you're in school learning percussion, like orchestral percussion, surprise, surprise, you don't learn a lot about client acquisition. You don't learn a lot about like the freelancing basics. Like I could play circles around most people with 4-mallet marimba technique, but if nobody's like banging down my door asking me to play for them, So I really had to figure out a lot of things the hard way because I just wasn't being taught. And ultimately that's really what set the course for my own self-education throughout my career, and also what really drives me as an educator to try to figure out what are those things that really should have been taught in music school or in audio school, but are just completely overlooked because the people that are teaching either don't recognize how important it is, or they don't know enough about it, and their ego is too important for them to admit that they don't know about it. Yeah, I don't know if that's really a backstory or just maybe like a
No,
mini manifesto, but
but I think that it's relevant. It's super relevant because it kind of says a lot about like you getting into the education space in the first place, because then you see all of these things that to you and to me now are obvious, like why didn't you teach me all of these like things on how to actually get work when I'm paying thousands of dollars. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, so you expect me to just leave with this knowledge of how to play my instrument really well, which, pause and say, is very important and also kind of the bare minimum.
Yeah, it's 10%
Yep.
of what you need to do.
Yep. And so I think you understanding all of the things that you didn't get taught is now how it kind of led you to where you are now, which is like teaching those things to people.
Yeah. And I think because I've been teaching since 2005 was when I first started teaching.
Yeah.
And I was teaching like an indoor drum line at that year, and then I was teaching like private lessons, and I was teaching everything from ensembles to ensembles to private lessons to master classes to teaching like kid rock bands and like all like everything you could possibly have done. I was doing it. I was a professor, like an adjunct professor, and in all of those different situations, I've seen so much of what not to do. And I think as producers and engineers, the longer that we're in it, the more examples we see that, or the more bad examples we see, and that's such a great. I mean, the best way to learn is to screw it up yourself, but the second best way to learn is to watch somebody else screw it up and learn from that, right? And I definitely screwed up enough stuff on my own, but being able to be in all those different kinds of situations with different teaching styles and different student learning styles and different ways of motivating or demotivating students, there was so much variety in like how people taught. And what I realized was that there are a lot of really, really bad ways to teach.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like a few of the really good ways to teach are a lot less about the methods of how you teach it, and a lot less about maybe in a way, like it's gonna sound kind of weird, less about the information itself and more about just really making sure that contextually speaking, this makes sense for the student to learn. Because we're taught a lot of shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that is like quantifiable and gradable and testable, but doesn't actually do you any good. I mean, that's the American school system in like in
For
general.
Sure. For sure.
But that, like, there, in a way, like I would say, like the information that you can learn can essentially be the most valuable thing ever, or completely worthless, depending on the context, depending on what you're trying to do. And I think there's something very special about the educators that I've looked up to in my career that are able to separate their own biases and their own ego from it to actually look at the context for the student and what the student is aiming for, and not just basing it on, well, what do I know? What can I do well? What can I impress these kids with?
Yeah.
Because it is gross.
I feel like and it's a conversation that I have with people. It's I've been getting a lot, because right now we're in the summer. We're recording this in July, and I've been getting a lot of questions from parents or students that are either leaving their high school and going into their college career, or attempting to go into their college career, or they are juniors, rising seniors, and they're thinking about that. And they see what I do. They see what all of these other like really great people do. What I would call like the middle class of the music industry, right? It's like very available. It is possible. It is, it is very, I wouldn't say easy, but it is accessible to people if you're willing to put in the effort and you have the skill. They see that, and then they're asking me questions, and then the number one thing I end up coming back with them is never be good at your instrument, be like technically capable. It's you. There's a lot of business stuff that you're gonna have to learn that I can almost guarantee you in your 4 years in high school you've never even touched any of these subjects. And get started now while you're in your senior year in high school or in your freshman year at college. Maybe take some, if you are deciding to go to college, like take some business courses and learn how the business world works and see how you can apply some of those aspects to creatives, because a lot of people aren't thinking that way. They're thinking, I want to do music production, therefore I need to learn how to, make a Drake beat or something. And it's like, you need to know that, sure, if that's the lane that you're going in. I'm not diminishing that, but I'm saying in order to make a living off of those Drake beats, there's a lot of other information that you're going to have to learn eventually anyway.
Yeah, it's not the totality. Like the technique and the skill or the talent, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
like that is not the totality of it. And people think that's all you need to do. If you're talented enough, very aggressive air quotes, I might strain my fingers.
Yeah.
If you're talented enough, you're going to make it. And then you ask yourself, well, how many really incredibly talented artists and producers or whoever do you know personally that never made it? And then imagine how many there are in the world. So it's like, if talent or if just skill alone. This is what I always say. I say if like talent or skill alone was all you needed to be successful in the music industry, then there'd be a very different hierarchy of who are like the top mix engineers, the top producers, right? Because like I'm sure there are, I always would say this. I'd say to my students when I was teaching drum lessons, especially, that as a session drummer, at any given time, there's always going to be 1,000 other drummers that could play the song as well as me, if not better than me. But I need to be the person that they want to have in the room with them. Mm-hmm. Even beyond the business stuff, which obviously is very important. And I'm not belittling that either. I'm just saying that I think another thing that is completely overlooked in academia, and especially in high school, but like high school gets a pass, I think. But it's in academia
Sure.
for music, like the client relationship, like the interpersonal aspects of doing what we do, because we're not selling services, we're selling peace of mind, we're selling trust to these artists that they know that their music is in good hands. And that is not something that is learned in your shred guitar lessons or in flute ensemble, right?
Or how
like
to play a Bach etude. Yeah.
And it makes sense because the people that are teaching in academia, like full-timers, don't have to do that. They probably never had to do that. So why would they recognize how important it is? But I think that's I could go into like a whole rant about academia, but
No.
I'll stop myself there.
No, that's a good. But I feel like that's a good place to transition into. So now let's talk about kind of the jumping board of what you do now, more specifically, because we gave the really quick thing. You did the drum stuff. You were touring. You mix engineer, full-time that, and then producing and all that kind of stuff. And now, where are you, kind of what is the thing that you do now?
So I'm still mixing a lot, probably more than most mix engineers, even though I'm looking at it like kind of part-time mixing, just because I just was so used to doing 300 plus songs a year for so long. But the main thing that I'm really helping a lot of other producers and engineers with is learning how to communicate what makes them special, right? And like how to attract better clients just by communicating like the tastes, experiences, and perspectives that make you unlike anybody else that's maybe providing the same service, right? And when we talked about how the skills are only like 10% of what it takes to do this full time, I feel like it's also true not just for an aspiring like session musician or touring musician, but as a producer or engineer, like the skills, it's a requirement, but it's not the only requirement. And if anything, it's probably one of the things that is, I almost want to say like easiest to get by without, you know, because if you're a really great people person and you're really able to get great performances out of an artist and make them feel really comfortable and really open and vulnerable to get a really great performance, like the technical stuff doesn't really, you know, doesn't matter quite as much. And I'm sure there are going to be a bunch of, you know, producers or engineers kind of clutching their pearls and you know what I mean? Because like that is blasphemy to some people, but if you can make people feel good,
I view it as the barrier to entry, right? It's like your skill level is kind of assumed if you're saying you are paying me to mix or produce or whatever. A certain level of skill is kind of assumed. Obviously, that's kind of what a portfolio is for, and like that kind of stuff as well. But like you were saying, the better you can get better clients who can themselves perform well, and you see that in them, the better base product you're going to be having to work with anyway as a mix engineer or as a producer.
Yeah, and it's not just better objectively, like better clients objectively. It's also better fit clients, better clients for you, which means that you're going to understand what they're going for much sooner. You know, they're gonna trust you much sooner. They're going to give you more creative control. They're going to make you feel more appreciated. You know, it's the things that we as, you know, as service providers, as business owners, as humans, we need to have that feeling of being trusted, that feeling of being appreciated. Because, you know, I'd say in general, a lot of our people, like the studio people, we have a really hard time thinking more than like a year or two in advance, right?
Yeah.
As far as like what our life's going to be like.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm 39, been doing this for 19 years, and I want to do it for many, 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 many more, right? So I need to make sure that if I want to do it for many, many, many more years, I need to be happy while I'm doing it. I don't want to be burnt out and hate my job. I don't, you know, it's why I've been doing music professionally for so long, and I still look at it like a joy. You know, I look forward to working because I thoroughly enjoy it, and it's because I thoroughly enjoy the people that I've kind of, the clientele that I've kind of curated through my branding, through my marketing, through my outreach, through the intentionality of how I put myself out there.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have people that trust me and appreciate me and like want me to be the creative weirdo that I am on their song, then I would just, if I didn't need that, I probably would have gotten into a very different career.
Yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, actually. Kind of as like I don't know if this is appropriate for the conversation, but a little bit of a side tangent. It's just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I don't want to hit you with it and kind of get your perspective, but it's the idea of seasonality in work. You're talking about like being able to work over a long amount of time, not being burnt out, not like overdoing it and like working yourself to death. And making sure you work on stuff that you enjoy and all of those kind of things. And in my mind, I've had this really been thinking about this idea of rest as a proxy for consistency and seasonality. So push and pull times to, you know, being a baseline of consistency that would be, I guess, considered a rest. You know, like what me and you were talking about even before the call. It's like July this month for me has been I've definitely pulled back on the amount of, you know, mixing work that I've done this intentionally because I'm doing other things. So I would kind of consider that as like that seasonality of being more down on the mixing side of things. But then other times it's time to push really hard and it's time to like go all out on all of this stuff, and like you have a baseline of consistency that kind of goes with that. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that concept.
Well, I would argue, I would maybe argue that for what you're describing, it's actually probably less of a push and pull and more of just a redirection of your energy. You're still working just as hard
Sure.
Just working on something different, right?
Yeah,
and it's something
sure.
different that is like, for you, like with podcast stuff, going on, that's also in the long run to help to facilitate more production projects, right? So like it's I think it's maybe more a question of rather than like working and then like kind of pulling back. I think it is more refocusing, or maybe it's more a better described as like the whole concept of working on your business versus working in your business. And I think for that, I definitely go through seasons. Like I'm just in the middle of, I think kind of like hopefully at the end of a big season of working on the business. And I've been writing a lot of material, like filming a lot of stuff, recording a lot of stuff. Probably, yeah, like I think I said this on the call, or that little like pre-recorded catch up. I've probably written like 200, 300 pages worth of like educational material in the past month or two.
Yeah.
On top of the podcast, on top of social media content, on top of mixing, on top of having two kids, who are both at home for the summer, which is real fun.
Yeah. I can imagine two kids that are one that's older as well.
Yeah. It's a lot. But that said, like I think it's a season where that's just where my brain is and where the business needs to go, because this is kind of setting me up for the fall. And it's setting me up for the rest of summer with some things I'll be launching. So I think the type of person, and this is just my 2 cents, the type of person that can really thrive in this industry, they're people that they have the combination of drive to really want to do the hard work, but also flexibility to know when they need to shift what they need to focus on. So I feel like there are a lot of people that are really hard workers and like really focused, but they get focused on maybe the wrong things, and they mix themselves into a corner, not just literally, but also figuratively with their business.
Yeah.
Or there are people that are really good and just have shiny object syndrome, and just they never get enough of a foundation to make any meaningful changes. And that's me. Naturally, that's me.
Yeah. Without the lack of structure, 100%. That would be me.
Yeah, and that's something I'm active, like always trying to work on. Like, I'm okay with like being like full disclosure, but like going to be getting checked for like ADHD. Like I'm pretty sure my therapist and I are like both, and my wife and anyone that's ever met me for more than 15 seconds is pretty sure that I have undiagnosed adult ADHD. Like I've had chronic anxiety and depression for a long time. So like there's a lot of things that if I don't actively try to keep myself in check, it is very easy for me to get distracted. And I definitely have, if anything, I think the seasons for me, it's seasons of focus or flopping. Like I don't know how else to describe that.
No, I totally understand. And that's kind of where my brain is at when I'm like thinking about this concept. So I kind of got this concept from listening to Cal Newport. I don't know if you've ever read any of his books. Great author. Would highly recommend Slow Productivity. Fantastic book. Just recently came out, like I think in March or something. Fantastic book. But he's a teacher. He teaches, I believe he teaches at Georgetown, big school, graduated from MIT, but he's also an author, and he talks about kind of the relationship between people's everyday lives, knowledge workers, and technology. That's kind of like his sect. And so he says that he was kind of doing this practice, and I was like, I wonder what it would look like. So his is he pushes really hard in the school year because obviously his focus needs to be on his class and all those kind of things. And then, he's writing some pieces for the New Yorker and the New York Times, and he's that kind of guy. But then like in the summer, everything goes to the side. He doesn't write for, those published papers, and he focuses on writing his books. And so like that, his focus shifts seasonally on the things that he needs to push on and kind of let other things fall to not necessarily to the side, because over the summer you have to be prepping information for the fall and all that kind of stuff. There's a baseline amount of work that has to happen for sure, but that's not the focus necessarily. So I think that's kind of where my brain is at, and very similar where you're talking about. It's like, it's not a push and pull of workload, it's a push and pull of work focus, which actually I would say for people like us with ADHD is actually a more optimal way to work, because our innate sense of hyper focusing for an extended period of time on a thing, and then whenever, ideally we'd be able to like have that fall off at the right time, quote unquote, and then shift that, over to this other thing. It's like, oh, new thing. Yes. Let's focus again. Let's work super hard on that thing.
Yeah. I think the unfortunate reality, I think, though, is just that that's great on paper.
That's what I'm saying. It's very much a theory. It's very much a theory, not anything that I've put in practice or anything like that. It's very much just like a concept that I'm thinking about, that I'm like, I think that could be a thing that we could, a way to think. Yeah.
And, one of the tricks then for us as, entrepreneurs and studio owners, it's that, if, like, for the example you're saying about the author, like, he has outside forces and outside schedules that are kind of doing the compartmentalizing for him.
Yes.
And he's adapting his energy to work within that system.
Yes.
We don't have that.
Exactly.
And that's when I think where people have a struggle, it's to create those boundaries and to create that compartmentalization to even know when to turn on and turn off. And it's especially hard for anybody, really, like any neurodivergent person. Yeah. And I think that's why there's so many people that when they first try to go down the path of doing music for a career, doing 12-hour, 14-hour, 16-hour days is like a badge of honor, when in reality that is so unhealthy and unproductive, and it's not good.
Yeah. Well, even just for the ears, it was awful.
Yeah. Like, you're not going to make a good decision. Like, no good decisions happen after like 5 p.m. I don't know. At least for myself.
Yeah.
That's just it. So like, so that balance of, honestly, like, one of the harder balances, which is why I'm so picky about the kind of clients I take on. It's trying to find that balance of, how do I create a schedule for myself that I can follow, that keeps me like mentally healthy and physically healthy, but also works for my clients. So I feel like that's the tricky balance that a lot of people struggle with, because they want to be available. They want to be, if a client wants to come in from 9 to 1 overnight, they're going, sure, I'll be there. Let's do it. And then that client ends up showing up 45 minutes late and stays an hour and a half late. They just put themselves at the mercy of the client's whims, rather than making any sort of like healthy boundaries for themselves.
Yeah.
Which it was just like a lot easier said than done, especially in the beginning.
For sure.
But I think it is something it's a habit that needs to be developed, and too many people just never develop that habit until they're in their 40s, exhausted, burnout, and hate music, hate recording, all the things that they loved, they hate, and now they don't know what to do.
Yeah. And there's like learning to set expectations like those, and like take on that like mindset of structure. And I agree. It's like, early on, you're taking what you can get. So anybody that's willing to say yes, you're like, yes, money, whatever you want, I will be your slave dog, and that's not, we got to get out of that. I hope, and I know that you do a really good job of teaching that, and you do a really good job of like speaking against that. But I really hope that for maybe the next generation of people that are currently in their like late teens to early 20s that are coming up, they see that as like well, obviously we don't do that. We set boundaries and we work within like a natural time frame that makes sense for people.
Yeah. I think from what I've seen, with my younger students, like the college age students, it seems like they already have a better understanding on their shoulder. Because I feel like their parents probably helped to try to instill that because our parents didn't. You know, I feel like, you know, like I said, I'm 39. You know, so like my very, very much boomer parents always had the, well, you just go until you're done. You know, you do it until it's right kind of mentality, which is admirable in some cases, but there always needs to at least be a little asterisk that you know that keeps it away from being to the detriment of your own sanity.
For sure. It's not a blanket statement, it's a situational statement for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so Carl, I would love to dive into some of maybe the more business practices, and maybe give some people that are some more base level advice that we can work on. You know, some things that they can maybe take away from this episode and be like super actionable. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yes.
So I think a really great place to start would be like, let's say I really want to aim at the intermediates here, you know, because that's generally the people that are probably going to take the most out of this anyway. So somebody that's been working either pseudo full-time or full-time as far as pay and hours, and they're coming to you for, like, you know, help, or what do you find is like the most common thing that people in that space get wrong?
The biggest thing is that they're marketing to the wrong people. That's
okay.
Number one. I feel like they don't, it's a combination of not knowing what to say and also not knowing who to say it to.
I was going to say, does it feel like they don't themselves understand who their people are, or that they're just bad at the marketing side?
Well, I'd say it's just not knowing who they're trying to reach.
Okay.
Because if you don't know who you're trying to reach, like that is kind of that's indicative of not knowing how to do marketing, right?
How to do the marketing, yes.
Yeah, so I feel like they're actually like kind of two related.
Gotcha.
But ultimately, it's just people, and this is not just intermediate, like mid-level producers and engineers. This is everybody from a total noob to some of my students who have worked with multiple, you know, Super Bowl halftime show artists.
Yeah.
You know, they don't, not knowing who you're really trying to help and not knowing who you're best and like most uniquely what's the word I'm looking for?
Suited to help.
Suited, yeah. Like there's always going to be some artists that you are the perfect fit for, and very few people spend the time to figure out, well, what does that person actually look like? You know, who is that? What is that ideal client like? What are those people like? And once you figure that out, it makes it a lot easier to understand, well, what do they need? And like, what, you know, how do I position myself? How do I make them realize that I'm like the only choice for them? Like I'm the only one that has this weird, quirky, you know, set of experiences and tastes and personality that really just brings the best out of them. Because if you can figure that out, then all of like social media becomes so much easier because you know what to say and who to say it to. Like designing your website and like writing your about me bio becomes so much easier because you know who you're speaking to. Like doing like cold outreach becomes fun and exciting because you're starting conversations with like potential new friends, not just like, you know, spamming the world with used car salesman approaches, you know? So ultimately that's like probably the biggest thing that I help my students with. And again, at like whatever level they're at, it's just really trying to get as deep of an understanding. It's like a deep understanding of who they can most help, who finds the most value in like the unique thing that I do, or like the unique approach that I have, the perspectives that I have on music. And then how do I shine a light on those things so that way they see it? Like, there's going to be, you know, I'm a complex human. There's going to be like 1,000 things that I can do and want to do and I enjoy, but it's a matter of how do I find the ones that, like the parts of the which side of the puzzle is going to align with the exact thing that they need, and how do I shine the spotlight on that?
100%. And this is a lot more complex than just saying like find a niche, because like
Ooh.
you know what I mean? It essentially is that, but it seems like you have words to say about that.
I got so many words. Got so many words. And I'm actually I'm launching a new product specifically. I'm launching a new guide specifically about this. So this is like, I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah.
So okay, your niche. I define your ideal client inside of the center of a Venn diagram between what I call the 3 niche circles. Okay, the first circle are going to be people that make music that you enjoy, right? And brings you that makes you feel passionate about, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this does not need to be a specific genre, because most people, when they think of what their niche is, they think genre, like, oh, I do hard rock, or I do hip hop, or I do electronic, whatever. But rather than thinking of it as a genre, I think of it as what I call the style niche, and it's like, what are the underlying characteristics in the music that moves you? So they could be non-genre specific. So like for myself, I love big, catchy vocals, massive rhythm sections, and lots of little nuances and nerdy textures that nobody notices till they listen to the song 10 times. Some pop has that, some pop doesn't. Some country has that, some country doesn't. Some hip hop has that, some hip hop doesn't. Some metal has that, some metal doesn't. So it's not a genre. It's like these underlying characteristics. Okay. Mm-hmm. So style niche, that's your first circle. Second circle, I used to call this your service niche. And that used to be like the people that, want to hire you to do the thing that you do, right? Like they need a mix engineer. Cool, they're in there. But I've since adapted that. And now I look at this as your problem niche. Is people that have a problem that you are uniquely suited to solve. The
pain point you can relieve. Yeah.
Yeah. So for myself, I'm just using myself as an example to kind of like express this, but I am at my best when I am doing mixing and additional production. I'm not the best I don't enjoy doing full productions. I just don't. And I don't enjoy just mixing and just balancing things and, adding reverb and whatever, my mom thinks mixing is. Yeah. Actually, she probably doesn't even think that.
She doesn't even understand what a mixing does. Yeah.
Yes. I put in a thumb drive, I shake my laptop, and out comes Spotify.
Music.
Yeah. So, but what I really love doing is I love coming into this situation coming into the project when the production is at like 98% ready to send off to mixing.
Okay.
And it's a lot of stuff that the producer and the artist were banging their head against the wall trying to figure out, like, how do we get the bridge to feel like it grows more? Mm-hmm. How long should the intro be? This snare drum isn't that great, but it's like the best that we could find. Like, is there too much happening in the chorus? Whatever those things are.
Yeah.
I love coming in, getting all the files, getting them into my mix session, and as I start addressing the mix, finding those little things that are not, mix things. They're definitely production things, but it's way easier for me, for example, to like find a better snare drum sound than it is to try to EQ and compress and add stuff to a snare drum that sucks. So for me, like that, like being I don't want to say like the tiebreaker, but like being the outside person that helps to bring the objective set of ears to the end of the production process to say, you don't need 7 different pads playing the same chord in this bridge. Like, let's get rid of a couple of these. It'll sound better.
Yeah.
That's where I am. And that's the problem that I solve is like, yeah, they need a mix, but also like they need somebody to help them to just cross the T's and dot the I's at the end of the production because they've lost objectivity themselves. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot harder to express if I were to just consider it the service niche and just say, well, I need, my clients need mixing and additional production. It's like, yeah, but the problem I'm solving is a lot deeper and more creative, and it's something that I'm helping them to like feel okay about the decisions that they're making.
Yeah.
So, style niche, problem niche, and the one that I think is the biggest influence on how I decide if I want to work with somebody or not. It's the personality niche. It's what are they like to talk to? Are
Huge.
they a good hang? Right?
Huge.
Do they respect my boundaries? Do they make me
Mm-hmm.
feel appreciated? Do they are they just easy, fun to work with, easy to work with? Am I able to understand their vision, and do we see eye to eye more often than not? Not that we're exact clones of each other, but do I feel like we can both be teammates to work towards a communal vision for the project? So my niche, is my ideal client, the people that I'm always trying to aim for, the people that I'm always trying to make my content for as a mixing engineer, people I'm trying to reach out to. They're in the center of that Venn diagram of the style of music, the style characteristics of the music that I like. They need, mixing and peace of mind from helping to wrap up the last little loose ends for the production process before mixing. And I just love talking to them. I get excited when I get mix revision notes from them, because I know that we're on the same page, both trying to make the song better.
Yeah, dude. Okay, yeah. And listeners, I want you to notice something very, very, very important. Money was not mentioned at any point in any of those three things, because I think the money conversation, if that person doesn't fit those three things, money doesn't really matter at that point, because you don't need to be working with them at the end, because you're not going to be able to. You're going to hate working with them. That's going to always be a nightmare. You're not going to be able to fulfill on what you do best, and they're going to have a worse end product, so they're not going to feel like you were worth the money anyway. And if you hate the music, it's going to be I don't know if you do this, but if I have a project that I've taken on because I'm I need the money at the end of the month or whatever kind of budget thing, and I don't like it, it's a process for me to force myself to sit in front of the computer and work on that project.
It wasn't explicitly said, but when you think about the whole concept of that, the problem niche versus the service niche, or the service niche circle, the more specific of a problem that you can solve, they're going to be more willing to pay it. You know what I mean?
100%.
Because if you're just looking for someone to mix a song, then there's a lot of people that can do that.
Well, it's a commodity.
It's a commodity, But if you're looking for somebody that you can trust, that has tastes that you like, that can come in and help you to make decisions about things that have eluded you, that feels like a much more valuable thing, right? So it's the money will come, because you're solving more specific, bigger problems that they're not going to find anybody else.
Yeah.
That can do it. That can do it the way that you do it.
And so I want to use a recent guest, Harley Eblin. I don't know if you know Harley at all. So Harley's a really great example of this, the non-service, but really what Harley does really well, which is works with people who want emotional strings on, they want weird sounds and effects and things like that, and they want that extra sparkle of stuff. And he said it really, really well, is I try to push back against being a commodity as much as possible. If they're looking for a strings guy, just a guy to put strings on a thing, it's I'm not your guy. I'm actively not your person for that, because I do these things, these very specific things really, really well. And if you're just looking for a strings guy, go grab a patch off a contact. But but if you want what I do, that is why you come to me.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of it this way, if I have a leaky toilet, right, I can call pretty much any plumber and they'll come and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a leak in my aquarium salination tank, I'm not going to Google local plumbers. You know what I mean? I have to get someone that understands that thing. And it's the same reason when I when producers are hesitant to relinquish control of doing everything on the song, I champion delegation, and I champion doing as little in a project as I possibly can. And not that sounds like, and you're smiling, but like
I understand you.
Not because I don't want to do work, but I want to be surrounded by people that do everything else in the project way better than me. Mm-hmm. So I could, if I wanted to build a shed like from scratch, like out in the yard, I probably could do it. I mean, it would take some YouTube videos and probably a lot of frustration. Yeah. But I could do it, or I could hire one person and they could do it. Mm-hmm. You know, like one contractor could probably do it like pretty easily.
Yeah.
But if I'm building an art museum, and I'm not going to hire the same guy that did the HVAC system at the house to do like the temperature and humidity control in the fine art section of like Renaissance paintings. Mm-hmm. Right? Like why would you do that? Like if something is like that important and that's special, like you want to get someone that really, really knows the intricacies of like how to solve that unique problem.
Yeah.
And the kind of artists that I want to work with look at their music like that. They don't look at their own music like a commodity. They look at their own music as an important piece of self-expression, and also probably an important piece of them growing a sustainable career for themselves. Mm-hmm. So I'm not, the clients I'm attracting and that I'm trying to find are not looking for the commodity. They're looking for the specialist.
That's a very good, a very, very well explained Venn diagram. Whenever you drop that link, I will drop it in the description of
It'll be out this week, so I'll send you the link once I have it.
Your episode won't be out until next month. So the link for that will be in the description if that is what people want to check that out, because that is big, great information, especially for, I think that, across the board, like you were saying, like there are people that have been in the industry for years that don't understand that. And if you understand that, you can build a business off of the back of that.
Yeah. And it's also why I think ads very rarely work for like mix engineers and producers. Mm-hmm. And they're or like just straight up like, hey, this, studio time here, blah, blah, blah. Well, because number one, the kind of clients that I want to work with would never hire a mix engineer that they found in an ad.
Yeah.
Right. And you know who would? Total beginners. Mm-hmm. So would ads work to get you clients? Yeah. But if the baseline requirement, we're talking about like, the minimum requirement for doing our job is like the technical skill, but that's like a small part of it. Well, like being an artist and having a pulse and being willing to pay money is like a minimum requirement, but like there's more to it than just that. And when you see people that on their website, they say, I specialize in rock, pop, blues, jazz, podcasts, film music, video game music. And it's like, how do you specialize?
Yeah.
In
everything in music. I specialize in music.
Yeah. Like that would be like going to a doctor and they said, I specialize in humans.
It's like being a sports person and being like, I specialize in the Olympics.
Yeah, it just no, like you yeah. So the more services you provide, and the more like the broader of a net that you try to cast, like I don't want to say like this, the more small fish you're gonna get. I don't know, that metaphor probably kind of works if you don't think about it, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You can attract a lot of the wrong people.
Yes.
If you don't know who you're trying to attract in the first place.
Well, and a lot of people that are going to be hard to work with, they're going to make your job harder. Timelines are going to take longer because you're not going to want to work on the project, so you're going to drag your feet on it, or Whether intentionally or by accident, like it's just going to happen. Or they're going to not want to pay you on time.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother issue.
Yeah, or they're going to immediately think that you're too expensive.
Yes.
And it's not because you are too expensive, it's because they don't see the value in the, they don't see the value in the, experience working with, salinity control systems in aquariums.
Yeah.
Because they just have a leaky toilet.
Yeah.
They could care less how many dolphins you've saved,
Yeah. I love you mentioned it, and I feel like talking about the producer that's willing to hand off things. I find personally I get a ton of value and a ton of referrals also by just being the connector guy, by being the guy that's just willing to So I have a really good example for this actually, and I can share it real quick. So there's a band from North Carolina named Heirloom. They're a dope metalcore band. Shouts to my people. They're awesome. I met them because I was/am in a post-hardcore band out of North Carolina. We both played a bunch of shows together, knew a lot of the same people. We played a show together, and I noticed that their drummer had a Ghost Inside shirt on, and I was like, hey, that's really cool. I know their guitar player. He produces bands. This band is really cool. I'm going to take a video of this band and text it to my friend and be like, hey, this band is dope. I think you should work with them. I know they're fans of your band. And he produces, and, he does a great job. And so literally, I was not making money off of this at all at this point. Like, I'm just band I know of friends that I have, gonna ship it to my other friend who I know makes dope stuff in the genre that they like. Sick. Just doing that. He ended up bringing me on the project to do post-production, lots of synths and strings and all the extra stuff. And then Chris ended up getting an ear infection and couldn't hear out of his right ear during the mix timeline. And so sucks for him. It's really awful. But he's now got me on the project. He goes, Andrew, it's yours, dude. I need you to mix this for me. And he goes, I was like, are you sure? I know you have other connections and things like that. Are you sure? And he's like, of course. You were there on the project. You brought me this project. You did right by me, so I'm going to do right by you. And that got me the entirety of that project outside of producing. And that project has since has spiderwebbed into 20 different projects that have come through the door because of that one project.
Wait, metal bands have side projects? I never knew that.
Dude, it's crazy. Well, and it also it got me work. So now because I've proved myself with Chris, I've done work for the Ghost Inside for a lot of their stuff, and done work with Texas in July. He's also in that band. So I've done, bands don't just need album stuff. They also like really cool musical transitions. So who do they ask? But probably the dude that they've done additional production with that knows how to do all that kind of stuff. So I get hit up for that stuff from them now. And that all stems from me going, hey, friends and bands that I like, that I think could do really well and have since done really well. I'm going to connect you with my other friend who produces those kinds of bands and kills those kinds of songs. And that's literally no, without any kind of incentive on my behalf other than wanting people to make cool stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. Because it comes down to just knowing what we're good at, knowing what we're not good at, and surrounding ourselves with people that are good at the things that we're not good at, which enables us to double down even more on those unique things for us, because we know if somebody comes to us and they need, I always use my buddy Corey Riker's a great sax player who's in John Legend's band and plays with The Roots and John Mayer and a bunch. But I had a client that needed an 80s saxophone solo for a song, for a vinyl release of a song that they were doing. And I was like, oh, well, I could just call Daryl Hall's sax player. I'll text
Yeah.
him real quick, and it's like, oh, okay, so like even so like just getting people, like I wasn't getting paid extra for that. It was just like, oh, you should get Corey to do this. He's incredible.
Dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even something that I do a lot still, I started out as a session drummer, and like that's how I paid the down payment of our house, was like through drumming. And I hire other drummers to play on sessions because like, if you play that vibe better than me, why would I do it?
Yeah.
It's just I want to make that connection because the song deserves that connection.
For sure.
So that being that connector can be like person to person, or it could just be like person to song. And either way, it requires you like, to step back out of it and just say, how can I help the situation? What can I do to improve it?
100%. There's also instances similar to that where it's like, I got a folk thing, and I know this dude who's on all over these country records, who's like half of the top charts in the country right now, and it's like he kills a slide. He's like one of my favorite. I love listening to him to play slide. It's like, yo, we're gonna get this guy on this song, and I'm gonna connect you guys, and like that's gonna be it turns out amazing. He's because I know I'm gonna get good stuff to work with. Also from a mix perspective, it's like I want the best it could possibly be, not only for what on my side, just to make my life easier, but also for the client, the artist side of things, because I want it to be the best song it can be.
And I would go out on a limb, and I don't know who you're talking about, but I would assume that slide player also probably super easy to work with, super easy to get along with. Like, you just want to, like, you're excited to talk to him. You're excited to pay him, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why he's on half the charting song, like country songs, I'm assuming.
Country, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, back to our earlier conversation about how the technical skill is part of it, but not all of it. Like, because if that guy was a dick, he would not be on those songs.
No.
Because they're like, and this is not, again, like, I don't know who it is, and I'm not downplaying his technical skills, but like, there are probably other slide players that could do just as good of a job. For sure. But he's getting the calls because he's probably just a joy to be on the project.
He is. I can even tell you the reason, because he and I have had this conversation before, and it has come down to a lot of his skill is understood because he's played with like Montgomery Gentry and like these massive like country artists, and so his skill is baseline understood. No one questions that. They know that he can do it. It's that he works fast and is a joy to have a conversation with, and is willing to go above and beyond for his people.
Yeah.
It's those three things. I mean, it seems pretty simple, but I mean, I guess that's people like to overthink it, though, I guess is mainly what it comes down to.
And it's wild. But it's so true, like, and like time and time again, like those, there are very few assumptions that you can make in life, especially in this industry. I think one of the few is that if somebody behind the scenes, like, I'm not talking about like artists and like the public facing people, but like if somebody behind the scenes is getting like a lot of opportunities and just like absolutely crushing it, you can almost assume that they're just like the best person to be around.
For sure.
Because that is the real underlying, I think, the bigger requirement for being successful in the industry. Obviously there are exceptions. There are definitely some shitty people in the industry, but like,
that's an outlier. That's not the rule. It's the exception for sure.
Yeah. There's, for every one shitty person at the top of the industry, there are probably 100 really, really great people that are like crushing it. Maybe not be household names, but they probably had no intention of being a household name because they were happy just being on projects, meeting new people, making great music, and they don't want to be in the spotlight. And that's probably that's why I ended up doing what I'm doing now, because like I don't want to be in the spotlight. I don't want to be, you know, I even when I was on stage, like I was always behind the drum set. Like there was always that kind of physical and also, you know, intangible border between myself and the audience. So even though I did enjoy being on stage, like there was always that bit of separation. And I think that's why I like doing what I do now and like working remotely. Like I can be energized and extroverted for the hour and a half on a Zoom call, and then I can hang up, go crawl in a hole, and like watch a 20-minute YouTube video about, I don't know, airplane logistics, just to like clear my brain and recharge, you know, and then back at it.
I love that. So if you, outside of the not knowing who they're speaking to, or like, you know, client side of things, what is probably another large thing that you find that people get wrong whenever they come to you?
Okay. I almost want to say they're also related, but I would say pricing. I would say they generally undervalue what they do.
Yeah.
But I think that's because of they don't understand who they can help, and they don't understand how much those people value what they do. And I think it would be more specifically, they look at their pricing and the value as an objective constant, but it is very, very, very much not. So I don't know if your audience is familiar with the idea of customer perceived value at all.
I am.
You are. I know. Yeah, I figured you are, but like,
I am. But they may not be. So maybe give like a small explanation of it.
So the short version is, say, I am a sucker for. I'm a basic bitch. I don't care. I am a sucker for Starbucks cold brew. There's something about it. But could I make cold brew at home? Yeah. You know, would I save a lot of money if I did that instead of, you know, $5.25 or whatever it is every day? Yeah. However, for me, there's something about it where I know, like, especially during the school year, I would have there's a tornado in our house every morning trying to get the girls ready. I finally go, I drop my daughter off at school, and then on my way over to the studio, I go through the drive-thru at Starbucks. Everybody there is like super nice and knows me and is always like, you know, cracking jokes, and we're just having a good time. And it's a way for me to kind of like reset mentally after the stress of getting the girls ready in the morning until when I go and I start my day at the studio. So for me, it's not just about the coffee, it's about the experience and that mental reset. So to me, that experience is worth the $5 because it's not just about the coffee, right?
Yeah.
Now, my in-laws, who would happily just make Folgers or, you know, at home, they would never spend that much money on coffee ever because they don't see the value in that. However, they will pay for every cable channel subscription that you can possibly have and have, you know, 80,000 channels on their TV at all times. And for them, a couple $100 a month, totally worth it. My wife and I, we watch like regular TV on New Year's Eve and like the Super Bowl, maybe. Yep. And even usually there, we're not even at home. We're usually somewhere else.
Sometimes the Grammys.
Sometimes
I'll check in. Not the last couple of years because it hasn't been really worth it. But like, I used to watch it every year, and so I would get something to get normal TV for that.
Yeah, but not worth paying $350 a month for all the channels to do. Yeah.
3 to 4 times a year max.
Yeah. So for me, like, I don't see the value in that, so I would never pay for that, but my in-laws do. And the whole point of customer perceived value is that every different person is going to have a different perception of how valuable the thing is that you do is to them, because it's depending on how big of a problem do you solve for them, which is why if you spend the time to really understand, you know, your ideal client and who's in the center of those niche circles, then you realize, oh, I do something very unique and special that, yeah, not a lot of people, like not everybody is going to get value out of this, but the people that do, I'm solving such a unique problem that nobody else can solve, and they're usually much happier to pay a lot more money than we realize. And I think it's because we've been back to the metaphor or analogy, I always get the two confused, of the person doing the temperature control and humidity control in the museum. Like, I guarantee you, he makes a lot more per hour than the local HVAC guy. But if that's what your specialty is, and you try to sell those services to a bunch of homeowners here, like that just want to get their HVAC, recharged, or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
I clearly I'm not in that space.
Whatever HVAC people do.
Whatever they do, right? Like they're doing a yearly maintenance. Like they're not going to be charging $10,000 a day for that.
Yeah.
But so if you spend your time as the specialty or the specialist advertising your services to people that don't need it, you're going to get a lot of pushback, and you're going to have to lower your rates and lower your rates and lower your rates. But if you spend the time on figuring out, how do I get the attention of, who are the people that actually get value out of the weird, quirky thing that I do, you'll start to realize there are a lot more out there than you realized. With like 30,000 songs a day coming out on Spotify, like that's insane.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why one of them can't be yours.
And
if you had one release a day, that's a lot of songs.
That's a lot of songs. I can't even, golly. Yeah, that's a lot of work too. You know what I mean? That's about the amount of work that you and I are doing on a yearly basis, is like 300 plus ish songs, depending on the year. So, 30,000 a day spread across all of the possible engineers, and you obviously account for the couple of people that are self mixing and stuff. But that's. And that gets to another conversation for me of like scarcity, I think. But if you just look at it in hard numbers, I don't necessarily see scarcity. I see abundance. I don't know about you, but I definitely fall into the camp of like, there's enough work for everybody, because one song isn't just one person either.
Yeah. And
you're looking at 5 writers, 3 producers, sometimes mix engineers, sometimes you're co-mixing depending on the project, so.
And if you find, I'd say like most engineers and producers, I feel like, are pretty good at keeping clients and like having return clients. I feel like the majority of people that I first started talking to anyway, like they are pretty good at keeping their clients happy and getting them to come back for more. And they kind of like rely on word of mouth. But I think when you start to realize how many people are out there actually making music, and you also start to realize that once you have somebody that is happy with the experience of working with you, not just with the results, but like the experience of working with you, and they're going to keep on coming back, then all of a sudden, when you start thinking about how uncomfortable people might feel about doing like cold outreach and like trying to find artists that they really like, you realize, I might send, 10 messages today. I might spend a lot of time like really being thoughtful about who I'm going to reach out to, what I'm going to say. It's all going to be very like intentional and like emotional. And like, maybe nobody even responds to me. Right. But if you get one person to respond out of 100, and that could be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars that would not have ever happened. And also think of how many great songs came into the world, how many listeners you could have potentially moved, how many lives you could have changed. I know that's getting a little on like the
philosophical
side, but like it makes it so worth it. It's different if we were just trying to sell vacuums and you get your $15 commission for every one that you sell. You do it, you sell it, you're done, move on. And like that's not how we work. And I think that is probably another thing that people are, when they come to me, they're uncomfortable with doing, or not familiar with doing, is just like being more proactive about generating leads and like starting conversations, and instead of just waiting for passive word of mouth to hopefully happen and come their way.
That leads to, so there's like two more things I want to talk to you about. So if you're down for couple more things in the conversation, that leads me to the importance of, how do you view the importance of being able to communicate well.
That's like me asking you how do you view the importance of oxygen in the air you breathe?
Yeah. But I like speaking. So like I've been obsessed with this thing lately. Maybe it's because I've been doing a lot of podcasting work. So, take it with a grain of salt. But I've been really obsessed lately with the idea of anybody can have a conversation, but I think to like even focus in on like how can I make every individual conversation that I have like the best it can possibly be, right? Or being able to insert yourself into a conversation that's happening nearby you and maybe turn that into just like a great conversation, and not like trying to sell anything or anything like that, but just more of like the ability to express in clear, concise ways obviously will go in hand with the selling side, but I feel like it's a place that a lot of, especially people in the mixing, mastering, producing space, like severely undervalue.
So you're asking, like, what are my thoughts on like the ability to clearly communicate and to be able to like interact in a meaningful way?
Yes.
I would say this. I feel like, is it important? Absolutely. Is it the only thing? Absolutely not.
No.
Right. And I think there are a lot of people, especially on the interwebs, that are phenomenal communicators and have nothing useful to say. And on the other side, there are plenty of people that have really great ideas and really thoughtful experiences and perspectives that are either incapable of communicating it, or in the case of most producers and engineers, they're unwilling to do it because they don't want to get in front of a camera. And they don't want to get, they're too in their own head about, speaking on camera, making content, and they hold their own perspectives and insight hostage. They don't look at it like they're holding it hostage, but they are, because they're not allowing themselves to actually share that.
I see you as a person who does a very good job of, though you are afraid to put yourself in front of camera, you do a great job of camera text-based content.
I do?
I think you do. I think your Instagram posts that are majoritively text-based are very good and like very well thought out. And like, I'll just give you props on that. Like every time I see it, and like I always give it like a, this is really good. Like even just like a, this is very well thought out. And like scroll through a couple and like read it. I'm like, what a good thought. Like I think being able to and communicate doesn't have to be verbal.
Yeah.
And that's another aspect of it too. Like if you hate being in front of camera, can you do audio? If you hate the idea of your voice being somewhere, can you do text?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could say yes. But I think the reality, and this is like the reality of it, is that you're back to when I was saying how the main thing that we're actually really trying to sell is peace of mind, right? And trust in us that their music is in good hands. The quickest way to be able to build that trust and that familiarity is through video, because it's the combination of, outside of being in the room with them, locked in an elevator and getting to have, a long conversation, right? Because it's like, it's multimedia. It gives you a much clearer sense of my personality and like what my, vibe is, more so than still images, or more so than like a blog or text like that. So can you write or just do audio? Yeah. Is it going to be as effective? No.
Yeah.
Can it be a good like accompaniment? Yeah.
And that's where I think people actually undervalue it a little bit, is as an accompaniment. Like I agree with you. Video is king, absolutely, and then audio secondary to that. You know what I mean? But I actually think subsidizing some of that, because people are like, well, I gotta learn to video edit and do all this stuff. And like, that's a stressful process. Subsidizing some of that content output on socials as text-based things, I think, is actually underutilized.
Yeah, I would agree. I will say that there are definitely a lot of techniques and some software tools that enable it to be a lot less stressful to get and require a lot less editing skills.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you.
Like,
yeah.
Descript,
sure.
like, oh my God.
Insane.
Yeah.
Well, even like Riverside has a Descript-esque kind of thing. What we're using to podcast right now, like, has that like text-based editing thing, and auto vertical. There's either something called Video Tap that I use that it technically does the reverse, but it takes I use it for long form video. So I make a YouTube video about a topic, and then I have Video Tap read that video. It takes the transcript, turns it into blog posts and newsletters and tweets and stuff like that. But it also cuts some pieces into vertical content as well. Yeah. So it's a content reuse platform basically, but it's very cool. And like, if you can get past yourself and make one thing, there's a lot of tools out there to help you make that one thing into multiple instances of things. And
I think just getting over that hurdle of, it's like me, in a way, I feel like the hardest part to get over is just getting out of your own head and just allowing yourself to talk. And I think what I love about Descript, I have like a whole webinar, like a 2.5 hour video that I made where it's like all the different kinds of content, like the 5 pieces of content that I think every producer and engineer should make. But one of them, I'm actually doing a live demonstration of how I use Descript to be able to film talking head videos. Because it's just like the whole idea of being able to film it on my phone and just being able to ramble and allowing myself to ramble and get the ideas out. Because with Descript, for those of you that don't know what that's what it does, is it does take the video or the audio, whatever you're putting into it, and it turns it into a transcript, which is nothing, that crazy. But any edits that you do to the transcript, it does it to the corresponding parts of the video. So like if I just delete if we're recording a podcast and the first 3 minutes of recording is us just talking and making sure that we have everything sounding right, I don't have to watch it or listen to it. I can literally just look at the text, delete that section of the text, and it'll remove it from the video. So I can very quickly and easily go through and just like ramble about a particular topic for 5 or 6 minutes, and then go through and edit it down to like a 45-second reel without having to watch it. Obviously, I'll be able to go through and like, I'll check it once I've done that first pass of editing and make sure that everything does look good. But it removes the necessity of me having to watch myself screw up. Right? And which once you've gone through that and you realize, I can delete it before I have to watch myself and get in my own head and get nervous. Then when I go to record the next one, I can forgive myself for screwing up and for rambling and going on or whatever, or getting off track, because I don't have to sit through it and watch it and try to piece it together and, watch my own mistake 5 times in a row to try to get the cut point right. Like I can just get out of my own head and actually get the idea across that I want. And that has been so huge because it enables me to get to not hold the insight hostage, like I was saying. Like it enables me to just like record what I'm inspired to talk about, whether I'm here in my like little, home office / nursery, or I'm out walking the dog, or I'm over at the studio, or I'm in the car in the Target parking lot, wherever I'm at. I can just go for it. It takes away the need for high production value. It takes away the need for a lot of editing. And I can edit, like I could film something for 5 or 6 minutes, and like I could have a finished reel with edits and audio is fixed and captions, like subtitles, in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
that's
it goes,
huge.
It's insane, and it's like super impactful.
That's massive. Yeah. Carl, I have one last question for you. What are you pumped about right now?
You being your friend. Making a new friend today.
Yeah, dude. It's been a great conversation. I just want to know what you're most excited about, what people can get excited about around you.
I am the most excited honestly, I'm the most excited about the stuff that I'm teaching and like the classes I'm teaching. Because I'm gonna sound like a dick. I don't care, but like I've been an educator since before it was cool to be an educator. So Yeah, it's been a long time. And I just genuinely enjoy it. And I've been so stoked on the classes I've been teaching and the students I've been helping because like they're ridiculous. The students in these classes are insane. They worked on like some of my favorite albums ever, and they're like coming to me for advice on this
That's
stuff.
awesome.
It's wild. But honestly, just like teaching this and teaching about like the branding and marketing side of running a business, but also like the client relationship development stuff, and like just figuring out how we as producers and engineers can express ourselves in a way that attracts the right kind of people, and we can kind of like build our tribe of artists and other producers, other collaborators. And it's basically like all I think about all the time. Like,
as a person who comes from traditional education and taught in a college for a little while, I appreciate what you do significantly, because you do what I wish other teachers had been doing in the education system. So
yeah, I mean, that's honestly like a lot of what I teach. It comes down to what do I wish somebody taught me. Because if you ever ask, do like any interview with any successful person in the music industry, and you ask them like, well, what would your advice be to, a young, like a student or something getting into it at first? Like, it's pretty much always something to do with client relationships or like understanding like the business side of things. Like, it's just, there's so much that is overlooked and not taught. And there are some things that are overlooked in audio school and like in the music school that other people are teaching, and that's awesome.
Sure.
But I do feel like there's a lot of stuff that is not being talked about or like taught in any kind of actionable way, and that's been really my goal, is to figure out how can I express some of these topics and concepts, like raising your rates or like feeling comfortable on camera, things that we really need to do to in 2024, 2025 and beyond. But all of the information you find on YouTube is like so generalized and like focused on going viral that it's not actually helpful and doesn't take into account the nuances of the fact that we are not like a B2B or B2C company. Like we're creative service providers selling peace of mind to other creatives. So there's so much emotion involved in what we do. So I try to figure out how can I take these missing links from traditional education, but contextualize them in a way that gets us to ask the kind of questions that we need to really be able to understand and apply the nuances of our quirky passions.
Yeah. Dude, Carl, where do you want to send people if they want to find you?
CarlBahner.com, Instagram, come say hi. I try to reach out and say hi to pretty much everybody that follows me. If they look like a real person, if you look like a bot and I don't respond to you, I apologize, but maybe make your profile look less like a bot. So this is your cue.
You need to brand better is what we're trying to say.
Yeah. But no, I think, come to Instagram, say hi. I don't bite. And I just appreciate you having me on here. Man. And this has been fun. And thanks for letting me rant about the things that I love to rant about.
Well, and that's part of the podcast, is talking with great people like yourself and allowing them a platform that if they just want to go off on like a soapbox that they can. So I love it. Check out the description also for that form that we were talking about with the Venn diagram stuff, and check out Carl. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Give him a follow, and we will see you guys in the next one. Later.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks again so much to Carl Bahner for coming on the podcast this week. If you want to check out any of the links like Descript or Carl Studio Pro's Guide to Irresistible Branding, there's the link to that in the description. Carl also sent me a special mastermind producer group that he's working with, and he wants you guys, the listeners of the Home Studio Hangout, to check that out while you're down there as well. On the YouTube channel, make sure you're dropping a like and a subscribe. Or if you're listening to this on audio, make sure to share it with a friend who you think is going to get a lot out of this conversation. Once again, thank you for listening to the Home Studio Hangout podcast, and we'll see you guys next week.